Feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Hey everyone, I'm your host, Mark Scribner, with my co-host, John Warner, here on the Shrimp Tank. The Shrimp Tank is nationally syndicated through 13 cities in and around the country. We are syndicated through iHeart, Stitch, Spotify, Google, basically anywhere that you can follow your podcast, you can follow us here. I know that this show is going to be amazing. If you want to go back and look at some other shows that we've done from some names like the Carlos Cashmans of the world that are crushing it, I think this interview with Rohit is going to be also on that level. With that said, we'd love to get your followership. You can just hit that little bell for the subscription to get alerted for this show and some next shows that we're doing. So John, what's going on? We have an awesome guy today, and I think it's going to go down in the history books as we got to talk to him in the early stages before he, went to that next potential unicorn level.
Yeah. Hey, Mark, it's great to see you and always great to do an interview with you. And I think you're going to particularly like Rohit and what he's doing. So Link Ventures, just so everyone knows, we're linking entrepreneurs and consumers to build legendary companies. And tonight, you're going to hear from one of them. We only invest in direct-to-consumer software, and we like software that can scale. We look for great teams, and this company Stilt has it in spades. I want to introduce the CEO and co-founder of Stilt, Rohit. Rohit, we love your vision at Link Ventures. We love the product that how focused you are on a product to help immigrants. We love your expertise in SEO. We love your unit economics, your growth, and your value proposition. And a close friend of mine, PK, is one of your early investors. And, he and I have traded notes just on how awesome you are. And your co-founder is a pretty special guy. Just a little background on Rohit. You have extensive experience in credit risk analysis and data science. You spent years building credit risk and fraud models for top banks. You came up with, in your role, you come up with the business strategy and you led the fundraising. I think you're at over close to 300 million with equity and debt. And you're a YC graduate company, which is a real point of pride. And you can maybe talk about, how that helped you in early days. You oversee the product and customers. And basically, one of the reasons we love Stilt is you're a financial service company that uses proprietary and public data sources to predict creditworthiness of immigrants with limited to zero credit history. There are 2 million long-term immigrant visas issued every year. And many of them, those folks who get them, face challenges to get access to credit, access to the American dream. And these are hardworking and financially responsible people who just can't get U.S. credit scores to be bankable. And you're doing something about it. It's difficult for traditional lenders and banks to understand their true risk, and Stilt predicts employability, predicts financial responsibility, and propensity, to leave the U.S. or stay in the U.S. And you've given loans to thousands of immigrants at affordable rates. You've helped them build credit, and you're helping to build a better society. You're located in San Francisco, and I know you've analyzed over 100 billion worth of transactions from your immigrant applications. So I'm in love with this company. I'm excited, Mark. You're going to get to know it. I'm excited for our listeners to get to know it. My first question to you, Rohit, is how did you come up with this idea? Is there a personal story you want to tell, and how does that founding story kind of manifest itself in the day-to-day at this juncture of your company's life?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, John. Thanks, Mark. Maybe I should take John along with me when I'm fundraising. He'll do a better job than I do. But when the impetus for starting Stilt was an incredibly personal experience. So I moved to the U.S. as an international student myself on F1 visa about 10 plus years ago. And when I moved here, the first thing I needed to do was rent an apartment. And for 4 weeks, I was sleeping on some Columbia alum's couch because I could not rent an apartment in New York. And everywhere I went, landlords were asking me for credit report, credit history, like co-signers and like huge rental deposits. And New York has this weird thing that they also need 40 times of monthly rent as income. And I had absolutely none of those things. I did not know what some of those things were. So I was just finding it difficult to rent an apartment. Eventually, I found one person who offered me a room in their apartment, and that's how I found my first roommate. Now, coincidentally, many years later, when I was in the Bay Area working at a company called Pop Sugar, working as a data scientist, this roommate was also working in the Bay Area at Amazon, and eventually ended up becoming my co-founder at the company. And we both were interacting or again, like hanging out together and working on a whole bunch of side projects. We worked on side projects for Uber, or like to help Uber drivers. We worked on side projects for building new technology. And one of those side projects was building credit risk models for the immigrant population. Actually, it was international student population that evolved into immigrant population. So I suggested Priyank, who's my co-founder and CTO of the company, is that I have experience in credit risk models, and he's a machine learning engineer. He has experience in machine learning. We can use alternative data to predict credit risk for international students, because we were those international students ourselves. So we built the model, and the first instinct was to go and sell it to other people who were lending, who were in the lending business. And we gave the value proposition that you can lend to more people. International student is a $30 billion market itself. Nobody bought our credit risk model. And we were working full-time on H-1B visas at the time, which meant that we could not go and start our own company and do all that stuff. So Priyank and I then decided, or maybe it was Priyank who decided, and kudos to him for that. He said, let's just start lending our own money. And I said, absolutely not. I'm not lending my own money to strangers on the internet, even though we built a risk model. And he said, okay, I'll put up the first money. So Priyank actually used his savings to initially lend to these strangers on the internet. And that's how Stilt got started. And I told Priyank, if you use your savings, only then we can start the company, and which he did. And then I ended up using my own savings. And then at the time, my girlfriend, we asked money from her, and then we collected money from friends who have never seen extra interest on that. So we have to buy them dinners, but we got help from all these people. And at one point, I think, as we were doing this, we were personally guaranteeing all the money. So everyone had to trust us that we'll be able to return their money, not our risk model. So at one point, we actually were about $500,000 in personally guaranteed money. And we didn't realize it, that we were just continuously building it up. And yeah, so those were the early days, and that's how Stilt got started. Then we went through Y Combinator, and then since then we've just been continuing to build the company. Now, as of today, we have raised about $275+ million in equity and debt. We are a team of 25 people working across 7 countries. We have tens of thousands of customers, and we have 4 products now. So we have loans, checking accounts, remittance, which is international money transfer, and credit building products. So we also help people build credit on day one of their arrival in the US.
Yeah, listen, thanks again for coming on the show. I have so many questions. I think this is a great space. And, your background, where did you come from? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Delhi, India.
Okay. And so I was speaking with John offline, but most of the kind of the developing world, if you will, is considered what they call non-bankable, that they don't go into your typical brick and mortar type of bank, right? They are used to using mobile payments and things like that. Was that also some of the impetus for you? Because, when you're using payment system through phone and peer-to-peer, if you will, that way, was that also like, why does this not exist in the US or the Western world?
Yeah, so the thing with developing countries is that the financial systems themselves are not as developed there. There's no technology, there is limited, what in US is called KYC. So everyone has a social security number, everyone has a whole bunch of identification, everyone gets a state driver's license and stuff like that. In developing countries, there is very limited information of that type, and that makes it difficult to have solutions that to bank the non-bankable. The impetus also came from, which is my story before the US. I actually also lived in Germany and London for a little while. So I was in Germany for about a year and in London for about 4 months. And again, at both of those places, I was facing similar challenges where I did not have a bank account, or it took me a while to open an account so get started in a new life. The main difference that I realized in the US is advanced enough that immigrants should not be discriminated against or should not be shut out of the US financial system. There is no fundamental reason why that is the case. It's just the bank's unwillingness to bank this market because they have to do a little extra work, because they have to like comply with a few more regulations and they have to build new risk models. So they are just operating in what they think is their comfort zone, and nobody, even though a lot of technology exists, a lot of fundamentals exist, nobody's trying to serve this market. So that's why we went here. And I knew why developing world is the way it is, and it's going to grow faster than the US because they will just skip all the negative things that US system has.
Could I maybe just, I'm sorry to do a follow-up here, but one of the posts that you put on LinkedIn and what I thought was really interesting, because I live in the regulatory world as well, is you had mentioned that you're not a founder if you're not actually having to address like the regulatory, especially in fintech, because the regulatory environment is very difficult. It's an entrenched system. You have the good old boy network, you have the FICO scores, you have all these things, but I know that crypto right now is going through this to a certain degree because they want taxes, they want to regulate, but how much of an impediment has that been for you just navigating through the regulatory environment?
Yeah, the advantage we had when we started the company was that we were very naive. We did not know the details of all the regulations, and we read the regulations ourselves. As I mentioned, Priyank and I did not have any money to start the company, no funding. It was our own money, which meant that we could not spend thousands of dollars on lawyers at the time. So Priyank and I read the regulations ourselves and interpreted them in our own way, and kind of like built technology to comply with regulations in a way that that we were able to offer our service to customers. And in the early days, I think that was a huge boost, and that is still in the DNA of the company. What we tell people is immigrants are not an exception to our policies in the company. Immigrants are first-class citizens for all of our products. So we build everything keeping immigrants in mind, and then the technology helps us deal with regulatory challenges. It's not always as straightforward. We have to convince banks, we have to convince lenders, debt capital providers, and everyone else. But I think with time, we have been able to convince more and more people that what we are doing is actually good.
Rohit, are you experiencing a network effect in certain immigrant communities? And I'm curious, maybe talk a little bit about the communities that you've gone deep with, and are there other communities you want to get to? Because when you say immigrant, it's not like this one monolithic group. There are a lot of different subgroups and communities and there are different kinds of trust levels and different risk trends and so on.
Yeah. When we started the company, we obviously, because we are Indians, we understood the Indian international student population market fairly well. I mean, our first product was lending to Columbia University international student graduates. That's how we started. But
you were like the Facebook of lending for Columbia, right?
Yeah, so we exactly started like that, and over time, we started getting requests from all these other immigrant communities. For example, DACA. I never knew what DACA was until I started Stilt. And this graduate from Harvard who was going to work in New York at a company was not able to rent an apartment because he was a DACA holder and did not have credit history, or his parents were not able to co-sign because his parents were theoretically undocumented. And then I searched about it and then realized that DACA themselves is a big population, and that doesn't get access to credit, and banks don't give them financial products. So that became a market. And as we lent to DACA holders, we just saw a surge of DACA applicants, primarily through word of mouth, because we never advertised to this population. But my biggest memory of a new demographic is actually the Filipino population. So we may not know, but there are thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of teachers from countries like Philippines who teach in US public schools. And when they move here, they have to spend a lot of money because it's visa fee, it's flights and all of those things. And these people don't have that kind of money. But after they move here and they start working, they again need money for the same things. It's like rental deposits and buying a car and getting settled and bringing their family over, so on and so forth. And somehow we lent to this one teacher based in Arizona. And soon enough, we see 10 more applications from the same zip code. And we thought it was fraud. We thought one person is just trying to, apply for a lot of loans. And turns out that Filipino teacher stayed in a community of other Filipino teachers. So as we gave loan to one person, like that teacher shared it with her friends, and we got 10 more applicants. So we continue to see these tight communities of immigrants from different countries. And once we are able to penetrate one, we continue to grow in those communities. So, and that still continues. As of now, Stilt has served immigrants from 160 different countries today, India being the largest one.
So that's your example of the network effect. And you recently posted something that your branded search words are up about 265% year over year. So that's also driving, as you get these pockets of groups and the experience is favorable, but you're also starting to get, across different networks.
Right. The implicit advantage we have in building Stilt is that immigrants are a natural community. There is no community around FICO score. There is no community around credit history and stuff, but immigrants are a natural community. If I want to get to an Indian person within the US, I'm probably 1 or 2 hops away from the larger population. And that helps us with a very strong word of mouth, because every time people are interacting with each other, they are just sharing about these types of problems. And as Stilt solves problems for some of these customers, they share Stilt with their friends. That we also see 50% of our customers refer actually one of their friends to Stilt, which is a massive, massive number, given that we are just a lending company. Nobody goes to a mortgage broker and refers that mortgage broker to all of their friends, but we see that at Stilt.
Yeah, and one unhappy person will tell 9 people that they're unhappy. So that's an unbelievable stat that you have right there.
Rohit, maybe talk a little bit about the meaning behind the name Stilt. I think it conveys someone's getting a leg up. Is that what you intended? And then I'm also interested the way you predict employability and financial responsibility. What are you doing that the big banks aren't doing? That is allowing you to be so successful.
Yeah. So on the name part, actually, my wife named it. My wife named the company, and we were wrangling.
I want to applaud your wife, who's like a researcher, in this COVID era. She's a very important person. So thank you for her leadership there.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, she does a lot better work than I do. She's a microbiologist, and she works at UCSF, which is University of San Francisco, University of California, San Francisco hospital, and she does COVID research, so primary COVID research, helping prepare diagnostics and medicine and all that stuff. So, and she leads research projects there. And she's been going to office this whole time, by the way. Like, we have been working at home, but she has to go to the lab and all that stuff. So, yeah. So she actually, at the time, she was my girlfriend, and she was we were thinking of names, and she suggested a bunch of names, and one of the names she suggested was Stilt, with the meaning that it is something that helps bring people up, either kind of a scaffolding. So we are providing a support structure for immigrants when they move to the US. And my vocabulary is limited, so I had not heard of Stilt before. And she explained the meaning, and the meaning really stuck. And we said, okay, we'll name it Stilt. And
there's something beautiful there that you didn't know the word, but you heard it, you liked it, and then you were told what it meant, and it spoke to you. And that, you know, it's immigrant. You know, you speak German, you speak Hindi, you speak English, but this word was introduced to you at the formation of your company. I love it.
Yeah, and yeah, so we signed up for the name, we got the domain, we got the .co domain, then we spent a ton of money on buying the .com domain, and yeah, that was the last nail in the coffin. It's like it's going to be Stilt forever, and yeah, that's how the name came about, and then we'll sort of do a lot of things around the name moving forward. Now, coming to our quote unquote underwriting, our unique and proprietary underwriting that allows us to predict credit worthiness using alternative data. So a little bit of context here is in the US, everything is dependent on credit history, and credit history is like thick profile credit history and thin profile. Thin profile is someone who's new to the US system, US financial system, and may not have enough credit cards or enough loans or things like those on their profile. And it's also a time horizon thing. So if you are just 1 year, if you have credit history for 1 year, then you are thin file. If you have 3, 5, 7 years, you are thick profile credit history. So our customers usually don't have a thick profile. They usually have a thin profile or no profile. And to counter that limitation, we use a lot of information about them: education, employment, career history, why they are in the US, their immigration status, a whole bunch of things like those, where we are able to say, if this person's working in a good industry with a stable income, this is their likelihood of earning X money for the next 5 years. And that comes from a lot of analysis I did a long time ago on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's APIs were open in 2015 before they closed them down. And I had like millions and millions of profiles of these people and their career journey. So I mapped that with credit risk in the early days. And that's how we built our first model. And then moving forward, then we also added, bank account information. So if you're, buying, you're spending you show some habits in your behavior that can mean that you're actually lower risk compared to someone who's just all over the place kind of stuff. Immigrants also have incredibly high percentage in savings. So amongst immigrant population, savings rate is like 20%. Amongst US population, it's -3%. I think amongst millennials, it's like -3%. So immigrants also know how to save and sort of grow their money, which again, like helps in the earlier stages if we see immigrants are saving.
Could have been a line in the Hamilton movie, "Immigrants, we know how to save."
Yeah.
If we get the job done.
Rohit, when you first started doing that data set, it wasn't all those things. Were there just a couple that you kind of focused on, and have you expanded, the different aspects that you can analyze?
Yeah, so initially it was very limited to just university and employment data. So we were just relying mainly on job offers or someone having a job as the income. But now we are able to integrate bank account data. We are able to integrate a lot of like fraud signals, your website activity and things like those. We are able to integrate your immigration related data, so we can actually predict how long will you be in the US depending on your immigration status. And all of these just help us triage someone's creditworthiness more accurately. And the more data we get, the better the system becomes. And that's where this $100 billion worth of transactions analyzing comes into play. I don't think anyone else has these many billions of dollars worth of transactions for immigrants that they can analyze to build credit risk models.
And is there any competition in this space that, you see like, I think on the commercial side, you see places like Cabbage, for example, where they're analyzing deposits and whatever other data sets they're doing. But is there competition out there in this particular space?
There's limited head-to-head competition, which means that there are a limited number of companies going after immigrants, actually providing them credit on financial products. But there is what I call just industry wider financial industry competition. So some banks would lend to immigrants once they have a thick credit profile. There are some online lenders who will just lend to even thin profile people. But the difference between them and us is that when those guys are building their risk models, there is this implicit assumption in the model that this person is a US citizen. And if someone is a US citizen and has thin file, then they are a very different risk than someone who's an immigrant and if they have a thin profile, because immigrants are a self-selected high quality population. So they are in theory lower risk compared to the average US population that has a thin profile. So all these competitors are sort of viewing immigrants from the lens of US citizens, and that's why they're not able to provide the quality products that immigrants need, and we just focus on this population, so we end up doing better.
Rohit, this is my last question, and Mark, I'm sure you have some others, but my last question is, what's your plan to go to the next level? I feel like you've had a lot of success. You're really focused. I'm really proud of you as a CEO. I think you're doing everything right. But I'm just curious, what's your plan to go to the next level, and what help do you need? Is it talent? Is it expanding your product? Is it where are you, and how do you get to where you want to be? I know how ambitious you are.
Yeah, our biggest thing that I'm focused on is hiring at this point. So if anyone's listening and looking to work in fintech industry and looking to make an impact, you can send me an email at rohit@stilt.com, irrespective of whatever job you want.
I know your co-founder was telling me that you look for YC companies that flame out and you try to see if there's any talent to hire.
Yeah, we hire talent from other companies. We hire YC founders themselves. So we have YC founders on the team who tried to do their own companies, but they were good and their companies didn't work out, but their talent still stays, right? So they are themselves talented. So we are hiring people across the board, also remote. So even if you are currently these 25 employees are working across 7 or 8 different countries. So irrespective of where you are in the world, we are open to hiring. You, and for any type of role in the company, we're hiring across the boards. Even if you don't see a job description on the company website, just still apply or send me an email. And that's the biggest thing that we are focused on. Aside from that, we are just trying to launch a bunch. We have plans of launching a bunch of new products for this population that will make their experience even simpler and easier and faster to be integrated into the US financial system. And you'll see a whole lot of innovation coming from us in the next 6 months or so.
Yeah, John, you actually stole my question, because I would think just because you're coming into your clients' and customers' lives at a very important time when they really are relying on you, that it would be very easy to add verticals and add-ons after that, because you've cemented that relationship and you've become instrumental. And it could be car insurance, it could be whatever after that, just because you have that high referability that's going on.
Absolutely, and because we are the first real financial product that these people get access to, we earn their trust, and that trust allows us to sell them multiple products. And by that time, they have not yet been integrated into the financial system, so we can offer them a product and actually make them customers for multiple products.
And it's a feedback loop for you, so you can make sure that you're serving them what they need. You can be much more attuned to the needs of this population than some of these other big institutions that may not know this population well.
Yeah, and it's like you alluded to, it's a huge head start, because by the time the other banks kind of figure it out and they're already on the map, it's too late probably.
Yeah, and banks still, it's funny, I did this in, I don't know if John remembers this, but this is a part of our presentation. I actually tried to open a Bank of America account now, being in the US for 10 years. And because I'm not a US citizen yet, I could not open that account online. So banks just like have very rigid structures that they're not changing yet, which means that even after someone's been in the US for a while, they're still not able to serve the right products for these customers.
Actually, one last question: how big is the market? Do you think? I mean, I know I mentioned 2 million Visa, but how big is your market?
So in the US, there are about 45 million foreign-born people living in the US. So 45 million immigrants in the US, of which about 15 million people have moved here just in the last 6 years. And we are currently focused on serving these new immigrants who have recently moved and are unable to access financial services. So these 15 million people plus all new 2 million new immigrants coming to the US every year is what we are just focused on at this point.
Yeah, I didn't mean to ask another question because I know we're running out of time. And I just want to remind all our listeners, you can get this show, all the shows by subscribing, Google, Stitch, SoundCloud, YouTube, basically anywhere. And Rohit's, all his information, he did mention that they're looking for talent that will all be inside the body of the show. But I apologize I should ask this in the beginning. What are the typical sizes of these loans? Are they, if that's proprietary, I completely understand that. But if you're comfortable, I was just curious of like, what's the average funding amount that is out there?
Yeah, we offer loans anywhere from $1,000 to $40,000 now, and the average size is somewhere like $10,000. So between $10,000 to $12,000 is our ongoing average, and that's enough for most immigrants to get a head start, to get their foot through the door, whether it's renting an apartment, paying deposit, buying a car, getting settled, bringing family over, getting married, whatever it may be.
The word stilt can become a verb that has a positive connotation to making it, and to have wind at your back and be able to take a quantum leap. So I'm so excited about what you're doing, who you're serving, and keep up the great work. I look for great CEOs and great teams, and you represent the best in all those things. And Mark, I'm so glad you're meeting Rohit, and I think you could also give him some ideas as he grows this great company.
Yeah, it's a great story. And I just would say shame on Bank of America. They're passing up a potential future billionaire. That's all I want to say. But someone else is going to benefit from that. Thanks, gentlemen. I appreciate your time, Rohit, and we'll look for some updates. We'd love to have you back as this story continues to be more exciting and evolving. And again, thanks for your time. We appreciate it.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp